Now you can use these notes on your quiz for if you're not
good.
taking it honors. So might be a good idea to take good notes. I'm just saying. That's a new one. I'm just saying. They didn't have I'm just saying.
Well, what is
Chapter 4. The significance of carbon. So why is carbon so important? It's muy importante. And the reason why is because carbon can bond to 4 different atoms. Carbon is the only element that can tightly bond to 4 different atoms. So here's carbon. Carbon has 4 electrons in its outer level. Do y'all remember that? 4 valence electrons. And that means carbon can bond to 4 different things, like 4 hydrogens, for instance. 3, 4. That's CH4. You ever heard of CH4 before? CH4? 10 points if you can tell me what the common name for CH4 is. I think you gotta write it down. 10 points. 10 points, anyone? The common name for CH4? I think I said it in here already at least once. Yes, green is correct. Anyone else? Common name for CH4? Pink is incorrect. Blue is incorrect. Purple's incorrect.
I like math.
We're riding. Wait, we're riding.
White is incorrect.
okay?
What's like the score for each team?
Orange is correct. It's called methane. That's
I like
methane. Methane gas. And CH4, a carbon bonded to 4 different things. We call it an organic molecule if it has both carbon and hydrogen in it. Are y'all with me over here? It's an organic molecule that has both carbon and hydrogen in it. So CH4 is an organic molecule. Now, carbon does not have to bond to hydrogen. It can also bond to other carbons. For instance, I could have a second carbon here, surrounded by 4 hydrogens, or by 3 hydrogens. Excuse me. We call that molecule, whoops. I got a lot of magnets, y'all. We call that molecule C2H6. That's not methane. You know what that's called?
Do you like say it out loud?
Yeah, you can say this one out loud.
Glucose.
Nope. It's called ethane. You may have never heard of ethane before, but if I take a hydroxide group, an OH group, do y'all know that's called hydroxide? If I take an OH group and I stick it onto that last carbon, I have C2H6O. That's called ethanol. You ever heard of ethanol?
Yep.
Ethanol, they put that in gasoline nowadays. The gasoline you pump in your car is 10% ethanol. You ever heard of that? They can get it from corn. Ethanol is also what they put in alcoholic beverages. It makes you drunk. Beer is about 3, 4, 5% ethanol.
Wait,
So pretty much you're drinking gas.
C2H6 is ethanol.
Wait, so is ethane and ethanol? Or is they like...
I'm sorry, C2H6O is ethanol.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
It's got an
Stick to
OH on
marijuana.
it. If it's just C2H6, it's ethane.
I'm just joking. No, it's not. No.
So are they like not the same thing? Like does that ethanol still have like it in gas stuff in cars? And then ethane doesn't? Or it does?
That's correct. They don't put ethane in gasoline, they put ethanol in gasoline. Lead is a whole different thing.
Yeah, I know. I was just saying, I was like,
Yeah. So C2H back to C2H6. That's ethane. And we can keep making this molecule bigger. We can put another carbon on, have C3H8. Methane, ethane, that's called propane. You ever heard of propane?
Yes.
It's a fuel that you can burn. C4H10 is called butane. These molecules can get bigger and bigger. C5H12, that's called heptane. Guess what C6H14 is called?
Wait, that's H10.
That's H10. That's H12. C6, you can just get bigger and bigger molecules. C6 is called hexane. C7 is called heptane. C8 is called octane. You ever heard of octane before? High octane gasoline? So this is organic. I'm introducing you here to organic chemistry. Organic chemistry involves carbon compounds with many, many carbons. It can be many hundreds of carbons in size. And there's a certain way to name these big molecules, but they're all carbon-based molecules. They all have carbon and hydrogen.
What is H14?
C6H14 is hexane. This isn't even in your book. I'm just kind of showing you this. You don't have to memorize all these. But it's interesting. Carbon compounds, very cool things. There's CH4. What was that called again? You can shout it out.
Butane.
Methane.
Methane. Did everyone say methane?
Methane.
All at the same time?
Methane.
Nice.
Methane.
You're like. Now you can add other things to the carbon groups other than hydrogen. Like I said, you could add OH. If you add an OH group to a carbon chain, that's an alcohol. Like ethanol. There's also, you could add an OH to a carbon, to a CH4, and you'd have methanol. If you add an OH to an ethane, you have ethanol. If you add OH to propane, guess what you have? Propanol. There you go.
Nice, Ashley.
An OH to butane, guess what you have? Butanol. Y'all got it. You know, it doesn't have to add an OH. You can add a benzene ring. A benzene ring kind of looks like this. Bam. You can add that to a carbon group. Have a benzene ring hanging off of it. A benzene ring is a carbon ring.
Isn't that called a monosaccharide?
This is a monosaccharide. A benzene ring looks a little like a monosaccharide. This is actually a monosaccharide.
Maybe about every 6 weeks.
There you go. You learned a lot, see? You didn't think you learned anything.
What
You-
did you say the benzene ring is?
What?
The benzene ring, what is that?
It's a carbon ring. It's a bunch of carbons that make a ring. See, the carbons can actually bend around on themselves and bind. This carbon chain can bend around and bind to itself and form a ring. There's all kinds of things that can happen with these carbons. So you can build these huge structures. An NH2 group is called an amine group. The R represents the carbon structure that it's hooked to. Have you ever heard of an amino acid? Football players, y'all know about amino acids. You gotta get your amino acids. We're talking about proteins when we talk about amino acids. You find these amine groups in proteins. I know y'all heard of protein before.
They make us drink it.
They make you drink protein? Like a protein shake?
No.
And then you work out and you have plenty of those proteins to build your muscles. How's it taste?
I mean,
It's pretty good.
Is it? What's it called?
I don't know.
you have like a
Creatine.
power shake thing.
Power shake?
Oh, crap.
This molecule right here is ethanol. That's the one that's in alcoholic beverages and in gasoline.
It looks like a balloon dog.
It does look like a balloon dome. Can you tell from looking at it
It's like a bunch of.
Oh,
that it's
imagine
this?
No.
Look at this. Carbon,
Yeah.
3 hydrogens. Can you tell right there?
Yeah.
Carbon, 3 hydrogens. Here's another carbon. That's that one. There's 2 hydrogens. Those 2. That's that one and that one. And then there's the OH group. That's OH. Can you see? I'm going to have y'all building these organic molecules next week in the lab. I have a set of models where you can build molecules out of it.
Hey.
Won't that be
Illuminati
fun?
confirmed.
It's going to be exciting. You're going to build organic molecules. So organic molecules can come in all different shapes and sizes. The next thing the book talks about is how molecules are put together and taken apart. I want to show you all a couple molecules that you'll need to become familiar with. This hexagon-looking thing up here, you'll need to know that it's called glucose. Can you say glucose? Glucose is the sugar that's in your blood right now. It's blood sugar. Glucose. You've got sugar floating around in your blood as we speak. You've probably heard of people with diabetes. Sometimes they have low blood sugar. You ever heard of that? Or too much blood sugar, high blood sugar. They're talking about glucose there. And this is a glucose molecule. And it consists of a bunch of hydrogens and a bunch of OHs. And at every point in the hexagon that you see here is supposed to be a carbon. It's supposed to be a carbon there and a carbon there and a carbon there. They don't write it in because they don't want it to get too, in this model they don't want it to have too many letters on it. But you're just supposed to know in your head that at every point of the hexagon there's a carbon atom. So this molecule here is glucose. C6H12O6. That's the formula for glucose. You need to memorize that. Glucose is C6H12O6. And what living things do is they take the glucose molecule and they can put it together to make a bigger molecule. The glucose molecule is called a monomer. And it can be used to form a larger molecule called a polymer. Have you ever heard of polymers before?
Yes, I have.
Polymers? Polymers are large molecules made up of smaller molecules. This right here, I'm showing you on the board. Look, it's real big. We'll make it even bigger. I like to play with my molecules. Look at this big molecule. That's a polymer. A polymer is made up of small units called monomers. See the small unit there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You put them all together to make one bigger unit.
Killed it.
What is that called?
Which one? The small unit's called a monomer. The big unit's called a polymer.
Can you spell that on the board, please?
Oh yeah. Polymer. Polymer. And the single unit is a monomer. We'll take one off. The single unit is a monomer, and the whole thing is a polymer. Does that explain it better?
I thought it was a glucose.
Yes, the glucose is the specific name of this monomer. Monomer is a general term that can refer to any little building block that helps make a big molecule.
So would
Do it,
carbon
Thomas.
be a
What's that?
Would carbon be a monomer?
They usually, you could think of it that way, but they don't usually use that term to describe it. It's too small. They use bigger molecules to be monomers. So we can build giant molecules. This thing right here is an example of how how, for instance, the way sugar is stored in your liver. Have y'all ever heard your organ in your body called a liver?
Yes.
One thing your liver does is it stores sugar. So y'all just had lunch and you ate a bunch of food, and some of the food you ate was sugar, glucose. And that gets in your body and it gets in your blood and it's taken in by your liver. And you know what the liver does? It takes the glucose that's just floating around and it puts it together to make a larger molecule. It'll just take these glucoses and one by one hook them together to make a large polymer, and we call that large polymer, it has a special name in our liver, it's called glycogen. Glycogen is a liver molecule that's built to store sugar. Anyone ever eaten like liver and onions? You ever eaten liver? Nobody here's ever had liver?
I've had liver.
You've had liver?
Yeah.
Do you like the way it tastes?
No.
No.
Wait, so,
It's got a bunch of this in it.
so that is what?
This is how sugar is stored in your liver. It's stored as a giant molecule called glycogen.
Polymer
It's
in the
a
liver.
it's a polymer in the liver.
Yeah.
That's correct. So how does the body do this? Well, you can take two different monomers. There's monomer 1 and monomer 2. And you can remove a hydroxide from one monomer and a hydrogen from another monomer, and that'll cause them to have a bond between them, to hook them together. So in other words, let's just take a look at these two right here. Can y'all see these two molecules? Do you see how this one has an H there, and this one has an HO there? Can y'all see this? An H there and an OH there. Can y'all see that from where you're sitting?
No.
You want to get closer? Maybe I can take it closer. See how we got OH there and an H there? Yeah? If you take that OH off of there and that H off of there, you know what you'll have?
Water.
Water, H2O. You're right. And so that's what happens in your body. You have a special protein, an enzyme, that pulls the OH off of one side and the H off of another and hooks them together to make water, H2O. And we call that a dehydration synthesis. Hooking together an OH and an H to make water, and when you do that, you'll bond together two monomers. That's how these two monomers are hooked together. Water is taken out, and the two monomers are bonded together as the water is removed. It's called dehydration synthesis. Can you say dehydration synthesis?
Dehydration synthesis.
It's fun to say, isn't it? It's a big term. That's a big scientific term. And all that means is putting two things together while you take out water. You can do the opposite. You can tear something apart by putting in water. If we want to tear this big molecule apart, what will happen inside your body, like inside your liver, is H2O will be used to tear it apart. An OH goes on one side, a hydrogen goes on the other, and the molecule comes apart. The water is broken up, an OH is put on one side, and an H is put on the other. And the molecule is torn apart. So every time you tear apart a molecule, a water is used. And that's what they're showing down here in the second picture. We call this hydrolysis. This molecule here gets torn apart into the two monomers. It takes water to do that. You want to see video footage of it?
Yes.
Here's video footage of this happening. Let me slide back through here. All right, video footage. You ready? It's exciting.
Many important biological molecules are made of repeating subunits, called monomers. When many monomers join, the result is a polymer. For example, amino acid monomers join to form a protein polymer, and glucose monomers combine to form a complex carbohydrate polymer. Biological polymers form by dehydration synthesis reactions. As you can see here, each of the monomers in this reaction has a hydrogen, or H, and a hydroxyl, or OH group. In the course of the reaction, the hydrogen is removed from one monomer and the hydroxyl group from the other. The hydrogen and hydroxyl group combine to form water, and a bond links the two monomers. Hydrolysis is the opposite of a dehydration synthesis reaction. During a hydrolysis reaction, a polymer is reduced to its monomer subunits by the addition of water. In fact, the word hydrolysis literally means to break water. The hydroxyl group from a water molecule attaches to one monomer, and the remaining hydrogen attaches to the other monomer. In other words, water is used to break the bond holding monomers together. Let's do a quick recap. During dehydration synthesis, monomers join to form polymers, and water is released. The opposite happens during hydrolysis, where water is added to the reaction to break a polymer into monomers.
Isn't that great? Was that y'all's favorite video ever?
Yep.
All right.
100%.
10 points then. 10 points if you can tell me what they said in the video. What is the actual meaning of the word hydrolysis? What is the real meaning of the word hydrolysis? She said that in the video.
I think that's right.
Oh! Yes!
That's right.
Pink correct. Yes, green correct. Yes, white correct. Look at y'all watching the video. Yes, orange correct. Anyone else?
It did it. It's on the
No one
board.
else?
Is that my computer?
Yeah.
Do you want it to?
Okay.
Do you want it to?
Anyone else?
1 second.
You do know the...
One.
I still owe you.
Here, 1 second.
I'll try to figure it out.
Yes, blue's correct. It means break water. Break water. So, there are 4 types of organic molecules that we're going to study, and we start studying them next week. Carbohydrates. These ones I've been showing you over here, they're called carbohydrates. Can you say carbohydrates? They're
Carbohydrate.
used mostly for energy in organisms. You can use sugar for energy. Then there's lipids, which are fats and oils. They're mostly for storage. You could store food long term as fat. Then there's proteins. Proteins have all kinds of uses. They can build things in the cell. They can carry out chemical reactions in a cell. They can serve as doorways to let things in and out of a cell. Proteins have a variety of uses. We're going to learn about them. And then finally, we're going to learn about nucleic acids. They carry information in cells. Have you ever heard of DNA before? Y'all heard of DNA?
Yes.
DNA is an information-carrying molecule. So, this kind of shows you the different types of compounds. You don't have to know these yet. This is what we're going to study for the next week or so. We're going to study the structure of each one of these, how each one of these looks, and what they do. this is all in your reading. You don't have to write all this down, I guess, unless I guess you could copy it from the notes or use it in the quiz if we have a quiz in your notes. But this is all in your reading, which we're about to start doing some reading here. So these are the 4 types of organic molecules: carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. Carbon comes together to make all these varieties, and we'll study those varieties next week. Okay? So this is just kind of an introduction to carbon and how carbon works. So I'm going to give you you got about 10 minutes here. I want you to read this section. And that way you won't have any homework if you go ahead and read this section, and you can continue taking notes on your reading.